What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today, Wednesday, March 13th. I am one of your hosts, Sean Murphy, alongside the beautiful bastard himself, Jeff Iafredi, pulling up in the dress to the nines. This guy. Look at this man with the vest and shirt and other clothing. Jeff, it's good to see you, man. How's it going?
It's good to see you guys too. Yeah, I was telling you before the pod. It's funny you throw on a vest like this, and immediately, I mean, yeah, I could be wearing no pants right now. You wouldn't even know. I mean, I look sharp, and I'm taking a page out of Adam Baydoun's book. So I got to rock with
I
that.
you took the words right out of my mouth. I was thinking the exact same thing. You look like you're ready to go draft some cocaine. And I mean, speaking of that, I mean, you just got back, like about a week or so ago. You were at the combine about a week and a half ago this time, right? So how was real quick, how was that experience?
Oh, it was awesome. It was my first NFL combine, and it was a lot of fun going out there networking, seeing guys just kind of casually strolling Indianapolis. I was in Troy's territory, in first time seeing the Pacers arena, first time kind of exploring Indianapolis. It's a nice city. It really
Yeah.
is. I like it a lot. It's my first time there. I expect to go back. But yeah, the NFL combine was great. Got to see a record being broke, the 40 time. Got to see some potential Lions players. We'll see in the future there, but it was a lot of fun. I'll definitely be back next year. Definitely.
Heck yeah, that's awesome, man. A guy who will also be in Indianapolis next year, assuming, he still lives there, is the Marquette Heat joining us from that beautiful seat. Joining from a dark, somber room today. It's Troy Sergey. Troy, is it because are you feeling like afraid to leave your house just because like are you feeling like you're gonna be the next Troy that gets into an altercation?
Ooh,
Like what's going
ooh,
on?
that's deep. That's deep, man. Yeah, yeah. I'm out here camping solo. I don't want to be affiliated with Troy Weaver. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I'm doing well. I'm doing well, Sean. But Sean, I want to start this podcast by saying a bold take. All right, a very bold
Oh
take.
boy, you want to come out swinging?
I want to come out swinging. On Thursday, I went to the arena that Jeff was just talking about. Saw the Pacers play the Timberwolves.
Hmm.
And there's a player on the Timberwolves named Anthony Edwards. Ever hear of him?
I think that guy's crossed my television a time or two.
That guy has a lot of potential to be a very, very, very good NBA player. And that is my swing. My swing is that I don't think we talk about him enough. My swing is that I don't think the league talks about him enough. That guy is good with a capital G. That guy
So
put up
so
44 points. That guy had the game winning block.
hold
That
on, hold on,
guy
hold
looked
on, hold on, hold
as
on.
smooth can be. Go
I'm
ahead, Sean.
sorry, Troy. I first of all, I love the enthusiasm. I think you're on the right track. But hot take Anthony Edwards is good? Like, where's
More,
the
more
Timberwolves
than
to the
good.
finals? Where's
More than
Timber like
good.
where I'm
Face
More
of
like,
the
than good.
NBA, soon
I'm
to be.
saying face of
That's more
NBA
than
good.
there you
Yes,
go.
Jeff. I
There you
didn't
go.
want to say
yes.
it, but Jeff took the hints. Jeff, thank you for
Yeah.
reading the hints, but
I
Sean can't
mean,
read
I'll
the hints.
just I'll just I'll just go ahead and take it a step further for you, Troy. I mean, like we've talked like before about like how, like it's blasphemous to like compare players to Michael Jordan. Anthony Edwards is the first guy where it is not blasphemous to compare him to like Michael Jordan. First of all, he looks almost exactly like Michael Jordan as a young Michael Jordan. If you go and do like the side by sides and like the pictures, he even sounds like Michael Jordan when he's talking. And like he even like there's even like a sequence when he was like ripping Rudy Gobert in training camp where he was like, "Oh hell no, you're not shooting threes in the season. I better not see you trying that." Like there's just moments where it reminds me of Michael Jordan, but it's like
Mhm.
it's the stuff he does on the court. His offensive game is explosive, but Troy,
Mhm.
that block to seal the end of the
Yeah.
game in Indiana was a just a different thing. And that is where the real like that's where the real comparison kicks in because not only is he the freak athlete that Michael Jordan was, he's that freak competitor on both sides of the ball that Michael Jordan was. And if he has that deadly combination, There is no reason that they can't be a finals team this year, even with a Carl Anthony Towns out for the season.
Right, and I think the big thing that I saw on the offensive end that made me, come out swinging here was the assassin-like mentality. And not just the mentality, but the actual go-getter bucket, not mentality, but actually was able to do it, right? He was able to get the ball and score at will. At will, I haven't seen a player score at will like that in a very long time. Maybe Kobe. I mean, Durant has aspects of that, of course, but the way that he has the ability to score the ball at will with that assassin mentality and ability, Sean, you're
Yeah.
right. He could be a finals MVP in the next 2 years.
I think we have a lot of I think to put it to kind of rephrase it in a way, Jeff, that I think what Troy's trying to say is like we have a lot of scorers that are historically great, that are very graceful, that that can put up these great performances. There might not be a killer like Anthony Edwards in the league where when it gets to the final 3 minutes of the game, we collectively hold our breath because we know that he wants the ball in those moments and he runs towards those shots, and it seems like he gets better when it comes time for those moments.
Yeah, especially among American guards, right? Like Luka Doncic, he's nowhere near the defender that Anthony Edwards is. We could talk about his offense, but to Troy's point, like in terms of guys that are young American born players, like you have your, Tyrese Halliburton's, you have your Anthony Edwards, like you have these point guards now that are up and coming. Like the to me, the face of the NBA, it's a lot of European players, and it's great for the league, right? You got your Lukas, your Jokic's. But now you got a guy like Anthony Edwards, and it's not just the block. The block was incredible. It's refreshing to even see an NBA player give a damn like that on the defensive side of the ball with offensive talent like he has. But it was the two mid range, to Troy's point, just daggers before that. Like just get
Dagger.
it's something that we see Luka do, but again, it's Luka. Like we're used to. For Anthony, it's refreshing. Like it's like, oh, a guy that's from America, that's here, that's going to take over the league, with that possesses so much talent. I mean, this is a guy that could have probably played in the NFL, and he's playing in the NBA, and he's a damn good player. So it's for Troy's point there about Anthony Edwards being the face of, kind of rising or, competing to be the face of the NBA. He has all the talent in the world to do that. And he plays with the type of mentality to be able to be that polarizing. Like he's not only funny, he doesn't give a damn what he says. He'll say what's on his mind, but he also backs up all the crap talking he does, which I can
Yep.
respect. I do. So Anthony Edwards is
Yep.
a dog, certified
The
dog.
the thing that's crazy with, with Anthony Edwards, you think back to like the pre-draft conversation about Anthony Edwards as well. He originally played football. So is he really that into basketball? Is it his first love? Is he that passionate? Can you believe that that was a conversation? Like in hindsight, just looking at the way that this guy plays, but also just how good he's gotten
Mhm.
from day one to now. And I mean, you think about it. I mean, guys, I hate to break this to you. He's not even 23 yet. Let that sink in. So, like, we're not even talking about a guy who's like approaching what his prime could even look like. And this is the guy that we're getting. So when you throw out the Michael Jordan name, there are certain prerequisites that have to be met. That is one of them, and he is that in spades. He might
Mhm.
legitimately be one of, if not the key, like the key figure in the NBA title race for potentially the next 10 years to 15 years if he can reach his ceiling. That's how good he is. Oh, and
Yeah.
by the way, he has Victor Wembanyama in his conference, and I still feel comfortable saying that.
Yeah. He's what Minnesota needed so bad.
Yep.
So bad. A player
Yep.
like him.
And
Yep.
imagine, and I think a big reason why I brought this up is that the media is talking about him. He's an all-star, but I
Mhm.
don't think the media would be talking about him as much as if he was on a LA or a New York, right? Right. I mean, we
Yep.
we see that all the time. But my goodness, the league needs to be prepared for Anthony Edwards.
Yep. Now I'm not gonna lie. At from the Pistons angle of all this, because when you're a Pistons fan, you somehow find your way to insert yourself in all these conversations, even when they have nothing to do with you. But you know, it makes me think about the fact that he was in the COVID draft. He was the number one overall pick, and like the Pistons were, really that was really when they were trying to rebuild. That was really when their first, like when they really first started tanking, was when they traded Andre Drummond. It ultimately, like started that rebuild, which like, it feels like ages ago, but like
Mhm.
they started that in 2020, and before they could, like, actually, like, properly finish their season, I believe it was, like, their last game was in Philadelphia, before the world shut down, and then, they lost, like, the last, like, 15 or, like, 12 games of their year, and again, don't get me wrong, they weren't gonna do anything, like, with those games. It's not even like they were gonna miss, like, a playoff run, but it did leave them out of the possibility of improving their lottery odds, and so a big what if that, and again, a lot of teams could be thinking this as well, but those ping pong balls are, very much determine teams' fortunes, teams' futures. They're like who they're going to be positioned to get. You know, now you're starting to see years later some of the ramifications of what COVID brought, because now you have teams like Detroit where who knows if they where they would have fallen if they had lost like 10 of those last 12 games. It definitely could have been higher than 7.
Mhm.
And instead, we're not talking about Killian Hayes as a Piston. At that point, we could be talking about even a LaMelo Ball, even an Anthony Edwards. It could even, who knows? They could have even been the ones to go get Patrick Williams at 4, right? I'm not saying that that like it means that their whole fate turns around, but it's like when you look back and think about like the landscape of the league and how like all those things can just, we forget how often those things can change just by the bounce of some ping pong balls. But I mean, hey, for Minnesota, they're laughing their way to the bank, because I mean they probably have, like him, Wimby are probably the best number one picks of the last 10 years. And that, that still includes guys like Cade and Paulo. Like he's just in a league of his own.
Well, it doesn't help either that, you know, uh, Pacers Tyrese Halliburton was in that draft as well. So, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So the two guards I was mentioning to Troy's point that are, American born, best at their position. It's refreshing to start seeing these guys play at such a high level. Ironically enough, they were in the same draft that Killian was, the guy you just cut a couple of weeks ago. But
Mhm.
hey, we are here.
Yep.
Did you
We can
guys
move
I already
on
yeah.
now.
Jeff, you made that point. Did you guys see that Tyrese Halliburton interview where he said that, he really had his hopes up for Detroit because they needed a point guard and he knew in his opinion, he was one of the best point guards in the draft at that position.
Oh, we talked
So,
about it at the time.
okay,
Yep.
okay, okay. I was
Yep.
I was
We
off that one. Yeah.
Yep. That was during All-Star break, and we
Yeah.
talked about how jealous we were
Yeah.
about how you were able to, like, be hanging out with all these players and some of the
Yeah.
crazy stuff you got to do, going on being on the same flight as Matt Barnes and
Yeah.
DeMarcus Cousins, which I still think is hilarious. Um, yeah, no, we definitely Jeff and I poured one out and felt the pain on that one very much.
Mm. And the ironic part about that episode, and hindsight's always 2020, and
Of
now
course.
nobody could have called Tyrese being this good, right? And
And
even
I
if you
didn't
felt
think
it,
Anthony Edwards was gonna be this good at all. I will
yeah, and
come out at
uh,
the front and say, I
yeah.
am not proclaiming to be a draft guru by any means.
You're not
Now,
Steve.
on the other hand, I did bring up in that episode that Omari retweeted his poll before that draft, and Killian Hayes was overwhelmingly the he won the poll for who the Pistons should take if available. So I trust me, I'm with Pistons fans. Tyrese should have been the pick. We all agree, but it's just funny to me that those fans that vote Killian are now being like, Psh, come on, you botched a layup. It's like,
Yep,
the end of the day, it wasn't that easy. But he
yep,
definitely missed on that pick. I ain't even arguing that. No
yep.
question.
Yep. Guys, something that that also was missed was the potential of Troy Weaver beating someone up. No, no, in all seriousness, there was an altercation on Saturday night. Of course, I've missed 2 games this season that I was credentialed to be at. The first was when I got COVID, on the day of the Pistons Raptors game when they broke the historic losing streak at home. So that was cool. And then I unfortunately had obligations that I had to attend to the other day, which left me missing the Mavericks game, which obviously was, devastating for multitude of reasons. Being able to see guys like Luka Doncic, like being able to, like cover guys like Kyrie in person, Jason Kidd, all that types of things. But ultimately, what I missed out on, and I did not expect to be reading about or, seeing footage of the next day, I think is the better way of saying, was a altercation that went viral. Um, and when you look at like when you look at the situation, obviously, like it's one of those things where context very much matters. But unfortunately, context is not really what we were given. All we were given was this video of Gores interacting with a fan where he essentially where the fan is coming up and pretty much uh harassing Weaver, and Weaver and him are exchanging words, and he pretty much looks at him and says, "He's lucky that I don't beat your ass," is what he said to the fan, and he looks back at him and says, "You suck at your job." And listen, it's one of those things where, first of all, I'm just gonna say this. I think we can all agree. The fan, like, I don't think anyone is in the right here. Like, if you're going up and doing that to, like, anyone at a game that, like, works for the team, even if it is, like, Troy Weaver, like, someone who, like, he's gonna be held accountable in some fashion or form at some point for, his decisions. That is the nature of his job. It is not that time or that place or that manner to do so. But on the other hand, when you are an official for an NBA team and you are attending an NBA game, and especially when you've had as bad of a season as they have had,
Mhm.
no matter the context, it's just a bad look. And Jeff, I know we kind of all talked about it a little bit before the podcast. Obviously, I don't think any of us here are saying, like, oh, this is, like, fire Troy Weaver, like this is the straw that, like, broke the camel's back. I still think if they're to move on, it should be for basketball related reasons.
Mhm.
But this definitely does feel like a little bit of a sign that Troy's probably feeling some of the heat.
Yeah, no question. And this isn't something that's foreign in the NBA or in sports in general. Players go through this same thing. Referee, everybody. I mean, it's a part of it. If you're a public figure in sports and you're around fans, that's why I brought up to you before. It's a little confusing why they have front office members sitting with the people. I just don't. But even if they were good, I think there should be a separate place in LCA where Troy can observe the game. That's just me. Maybe he wanted to sit with the crowd. If he did, that was already an idiotic move within itself. But regardless, speaking on the situation, I don't think either one is absolved from blame. And I'll say this: we don't have the context to what happened before that. I don't know what was
Mhm.
exchanged. I don't know what the fans said. I can't speak on that. We don't have the footage. But what I will say is, at the end of the day, this tells me, and from the clip, seeing Troy Weaver get that animated, is he doing a good job? Clearly not. They're not winning. So I get that.
Yep.
He's held to that criticism. It's completely fair. I don't know if saying it to Troy's face is going to change anything. If anything, it really is shocking to me because Troy's never reacted like this at all. He's actually been
Yep.
one of the most reserved people, to some people's frustration, too reserved, too quiet, too soft spoken. And to see him like that, it is out of character. But
Yep.
at the end of the day, they're paying him millions and millions of dollars to be a general manager of a team. And at that point, you just can't lose your cool like that. You just can't. I'm not saying the fans in the right, But to Troy's perspective, he's Troy Weaver. That fan, no offense to him if he's watching, but he's just a random fan. Like that's going to happen. The
He's
Pistons
just
are
some
not.
jackass in a Red Wings
Yeah,
jersey who's probably had some Miller Lights, I'll just say it.
exactly. So it's not him. It's not up to him to keep his cool. Although we like him to, he's going to be erratic. That's how fans are. It's up to Troy to keep his cool. So unfortunately, how this looks amongst fans is, well, he's not lying. He does suck at his job. Yeah, and again, Troy's not. I don't think he's blind to the criticism. I think he's. Although he might not be on social media and be on Twitter and be on Facebook, Instagram, all these things, he knows. He knows the scrutiny he's under. So to have to remind him to his face, there's better things to do. But at the end of the day, we can all agree Troy, he didn't handle it correctly. And to tell a fan that you're going to beat his ass, like you just can't win. That's a losing
Yeah,
situation for any GM. Even if the Pistons were the number one seed in the East, we would still feel the same way. You can't react like that. Got to be
yeah.
consistent.
100%. And, like when you said, like when you brought up like how uncharacteristic it was, it honestly brought me back. It kind of reminds me, this is kind of like a random reference, but a couple years ago when Steve Nash was towards the end of his tenure in Brooklyn, one of his final games was in Milwaukee, and he got ejected over like some call that he disagreed with, and he was like extremely animated, very frustrated, like just completely out of like the norm of like what we see from like a Steve Nash, right? And like whenever you see people get to that type of situation, obviously, this is a little bit different because like that was, basketball related. He's a coach, he's trying to fight for his team and for a call. This is a situation where there's like, a fan pestering an executive in the stands, different situation. But it is kind of the similar, like the similar effect of there is something to be said about, like how do you respond when you're feeling the heat? Like what how do you control yourself and act? And obviously again, I don't think this is going to have much of an impact on, like whether or not Troy Weaver is here after this season. But I mean, to our Troy, I think we can all agree this just is not a good way to, enter the offseason. And definitely if you're Troy Weaver making the pitch to come back, especially to the fans, this is just not a great look as far as, especially a great first foot to start that conversation. What are you going to do? Send another letter like last season where, you're going to say it's going to get better, because I don't know if people are going to believe that again this year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a lot that goes into it. You guys said it both. No one's really a winner in this situation, right? Both look bad, the fan and Troy Weaver. But yeah, I think for Troy Weaver's perspective, I'm so glad you brought up that Steve Nash video, because I think I do remember that game now that I saw the video again. And put yourself in these guys' shoes, right? You are hired with all the excitement, all the hype around you. The fans are excited, you're excited, your family is excited, your friends are excited, the organization is excited, the players are excited, and it doesn't turn out well. And you sense it, you feel it, and little things that normally, like you said, Jeff, you could just, throw off another day of whatever, I'm Troy Weaver, whatever, you're just a fan, I'm the one making the bucks. It's not that easy in the moment when you're under that type of pressure and circumstances. So I feel it. I understand how and why he said the words that he did. I'm going to beat your ass, right? But it still doesn't make it right. And I really am looking forward to this summer to see what happens, because I mean, this is a very interesting storyline and a storybook right now of, the era of the rebuild coming in, the Killian Hayes, Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart era to now today. There's so much that's happened in between now and then. And a lot that's going to happen in the future. And it's going to be an interesting summer, Sean. That's all I got to say.
I
Mhm.
think there's something to be said about the concept of, would this be the time, for, like Detroit to make that transition, if they were ultimately going to, because this is the summer where they're going to be, begin to have some of that cap space. And, like there could potentially be a situation where, we have where, the Pistons, they essentially were strapped for space for all these years because of Stan Van Gundy making decisions to try and save his job and in that type of effort. So, it's one of those things where, again, I'm not saying, like, I'm not saying my opinion of, like, this is what the Pistons should do, but as the season, like, starts to, like, head towards, like, its wrapping point. And again, we'll see how, like, we'll see how things move along. We'll see how, like, things develop. There's still some hoops to be played, and the the off season's going to definitely tell us a lot. But I mean, again, this is to go into having that conversation, momentum and goodwill is a really important thing. I just don't know, especially given the season that's already had. It's like this is just the last type of story the Pistons needed, especially like not even to mention the Isaiah Stewart stuff that happened a couple of weeks ago, not even mention all the ref controversy stuff that they've been involved in. Just, it's just they can't have like a clean week. Some of it self-imposed, some of it, against them, but it's you know, just brutal. Don't really know like what else to say other. It's just brutal.
Yeah, and it's just such poor timing. Like it just you couldn't have worse of a time something like this to happen. Like it you just can't. And I don't think you're ever going to convince the public. And speaking of I mean Pistons fans, that Troy Weaver deserves any amount of grace, given how
Right.
bad the Pistons are. Like I mean, everyone's so emotionally invested, including us, because we cover the team. We, of
Mhm.
course, are Pistons fans. Like it's just hard to even have a case for Troy. That's why it. Although I understand that acting like that from a fan's perspective, is something I wouldn't do, and no one I know would do. But unfortunately, that's what fans are going to do. So at
Mhm.
the end of the day, Troy is and he is in the position he's in for a reason. Like although he's never done this prior, doesn't absolve him from what happened. So,
Right.
hopefully, if moving forward, that man will not be anywhere near fans, and he can watch the game in peace at somewhere else other than in the stands with fans
Yeah,
when they have 10
at
wins
least
on
for
the
the rest of
season.
this season, you gotta think, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
um,
jeez,
yeah,
I could
yeah.
see like the Celtics GM coming down there and hanging with the fans. So, like, hey, we're winning, boys. Like it's all good. But you got 10 wins. Like if I'm Troy,
Everyone wants to kick it with the fans when you're first in the standings. That's
yeah,
when that's
yeah,
when it's fun. That's when you
yeah,
wanna be there. Yeah,
yeah,
100%. But yeah, again, when it's 10 wins in the month of March, it's a little bit more difficult. A lot easier said than done in that department.
yeah. Just hide in a little war bunker. Just kind of peek your head out when the season ends. You know what I mean? Like just go back down there, Troy. Hide, shut the door. You got food for the rest of the season in there. Just hide away. You'll be all right.
Yep, 100%. And, speaking of having to hide in a bunker and kinda wanna just, forget about the rest of this season, a guy that's gonna have to, unfortunately, Sadiq Bey, former Piston, now Atlanta Hawk. It was announced earlier today that his season, is unfortunately at its end as he unfortunately tore his left ACL, which was revealed in an MRI on Monday. Going into this, like, Sadiq was already kind of having a struggle of a season. He is up there with as one of the lowest percentages in 3-point corner shooting in the league this year, and is really high up there in attempts. I believe he's somewhere around like 28% from the corner on like 200 plus attempts from beyond the arc, which is not good.
Mhm.
Especially, it's like, and obviously, like, Asar Thompson is also in that conversation. The difference is Sadiq Bey came into the league as a 3-and-D specialist. At least that was the pitch on Sadiq Bey, right? And especially at the beginning of his tenure in Detroit, there was a ton of promise. There was the 50-point game that in Orlando, where it was the only NBA game on the calendar that day. It was during the tournament. It was electric. It was, it was one of those nights where, you felt like you're watching a guy like, show that he was going to be, like a guy in this league for years to come. But then, I think kind of like with some of the injuries and some of the things that happened on the Pistons and just kind of like player development things, it just didn't work out in Detroit. And in my opinion, I think Atlanta was the worst possible landing spot for him, as far as a place to get traded to. And unfortunately, I think leading, like, through this season, I think you've kind of seen some of the reasons why of kind of the lack of culture, lack of development on the defensive side of the ball. And now kind of, for all intents and purposes, losing his 8 ball, the thing that's, got him into the league in the first place, his 3-point shot. Obviously, hope he can recover and get in a situation where he can get another chance and turn around and be better. But I mean, it's just been a rough season for Sadiq Bey, and this is definitely a sad way to see it end. What are your guys' thoughts?
You can go, Troy.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was just gonna say, he's a guy that, of course, we all root for, right? I mean, he gave it his
Mhm.
110% when he was in Detroit. We saw those flashes. I'm glad he brought up that 50-point game. Not just that, but you remember in his rookie season, he was Eastern Conference Player of the Month, not
Yep.
Rookie of the Month, Player of the Month. So yeah, I mean, we know what this guy is capable of doing, and of course, we know that he was a big part of that rebuild as far as a guy who got touches, a guy who played solid defense, a guy who Dwayne Casey himself, I think, really poured into and believed into when he was here in Detroit.
Mhm.
But yeah, Atlanta's is such an interesting team because they're coasting, right? I mean, they're good enough to be a play-in team as far as talent-wise. They did a deep run a few years ago to the Eastern Conference. They lost, of course, to Milwaukee. They played pretty bad that series, but now you have a Dejounte Murray in there, kind of as your Robin. But we've even debated on this podcast, is he more of an insurance policy kind of thing? Clint Capella, I actually was hoping and thinking he would take a good leap this year. He's a guy that I like, but their roster isn't catering to his development. And I think with
Mhm.
that being said, touches are an important thing on the offensive end, and we know he can play that defensive end, but he needs threes. And I know he's missing a lot of them, but it's a sad tale. There's not much more I have to say besides a sad tale.
Yeah. 100%. And I mean, Jeff is a guy who covers, football as extensively as you do on crunch time and all the stuff that you do. I mean, we say it all the time in football. Few things are more important than fit
Mhm.
and, like, and where you're ending up. And I
Mm.
think with Sadiq Bey, like, this is like a prime example of that.
Yeah, it is, and it's unfortunate because Sadiq he failed to reach a contract extension with the Hawks before the season, and then he tears his ACL. It's sad. Although I never was on, and I don't think we were ever on the side of paying or extending a Sadiq Bey and paying him what we thought he would command. It's still
Mhm.
unfortunate. Like Sadiq Bey, the human being, he's a great dude. He is,
Yep.
and honestly, he is a good basketball player. But fit, like you said, is everything. Like he's not a B plus defender. Sometimes he's inefficient. Sometimes he's inconsistent.
Unfortunately, sometimes he's a C minus D plus defender at a lot of
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, that's most of the time. So for him, it's most likely, and of course I'm not an agent, but most likely he's going to head into this offseason and probably take a shorter term deal to prove himself once again. And this is kind of where the NBA and just all sports is. It's unfortunate when you have an injury like that. And not that he relies on his quickness or his athleticism, but it is unfortunate. Like right before he's supposed to get a big payday, he's having a decent year this year. He's averaging like 13, 14 points for the Hawks, and then he hits free agency, and things are different now. So all farewell. Wish him the best. I think he'll end up in a pretty good situation. I don't know if he'll ever start or he should. I think he's a great guy to come off your bench, get you some buckets. You got to have some good defenders around him. But at the end of the day, it is unfortunate for someone like Sadiq Bey. He's always been a professional. That's one thing
Yeah.
you can't argue against Sadiq. He's always been professional.
I'd like to see him either coming off the bench in a rotation on a really good playoff team, like a New York or like a Golden State would be really good for him. Like a place like that's like deep in culture, and he would have a very defined, specific role of what they would want for him. But like even teams like like San Antonio and Brooklyn, who are like who need to like find those sparks in order to like really make the turnarounds they want to make. Obviously, San Antonio, you have a pretty big freaking spark in Victor Wembanyama, but I mean, the more talent you have, the better, the faster you can compete. Really, ultimately, he just needs to go to a place where, like, again, he can just have a defined role of what he's expected to do, but also something that's realistic for him because a lot of times in Detroit, especially towards the end, it just became him trying to kind of be that number one scorer. and, like, trying to, like, kinda, like, be the center of the offense. That's just not who he is, right? And,
Yeah, and I think he also to your point about San Antonio, given Popovich is there, he needs a coach to be like, "Listen, this is who you are. Like,
yep,
this isn't I know this is what you wanna be. This is what you are." Like, and you're gonna have to accept that, and with that comes a good coach. So the kind of the
yep,
destinations you mentioned, all established coaches. I think that's where he'd probably fit
mhm,
best. Gotta be
Well,
honest.
he's a guy, yeah, he is a guy that has all the potential in the world to be a star at his role. Right? I mean, we
yep,
say that there's two types of players. There's stars and stars at their role. And he has everything in his bag to be a star at his role on and really all 30 teams. All 30 teams could benefit from a Sadiq Bey on your team. But yes, it's the right fit, the right coach, the right teammates.
mhm.
All that plays into factor. But you wish him well because he is an exciting player to watch.
For sure. And, there's definitely gonna be, some uncertainty for him coming into the season to like, to your point, Jeff, like the timing of it all with like free agency, it's definitely gonna be, like difficult time. I believe, coming up this summer, he's going to be a restricted free agent. So because of that, I think it's definitely going to like be fascinating just to see how that develops because Atlanta, in theory, they will have like like the ability to hold on to him like if they want to some degree, but again, it'll just be interesting to see what happens because again, I think he needs a fresh start, and this could be an unfortunate catalyst to that. Um, speaking of very very devastating injuries, we don't know the extent of it yet as of recording, but Alperen Sengun, the Houston Rockets big man, the other night in the final minutes in Sacramento went down, and it was very quickly apparent that it was bad. It was a very awkward landing. I haven't watched too many replays of it just because I don't want to see like the potential whatever thing transpired, but whenever a player cannot get off the court on his own power and has to be brought off via a wheelchair, that is almost never a good sign. And you just hope that this isn't something that could derail what looks like could be a damn great career because I mean, just the flashes of this season, man. I mean, the entire Houston Rockets like future looks completely different now because of the development of Alperen Sengun.
Yeah, and he's another one of those European bigs that are, and that is transforming into and just an all-star. One of the
Mhm.
best young bigs in the NBA. I mean, you look at Jokic, who kind of set the standard, but besides, and I'm talking about more the point center guys because there
Right.
is, of course, a Joel Embiid, but you got Domantas Sabonis, you got Jokic, you got Sengun, you got these guys that are just not only gifted scorers and guys that don't rely on athleticism, but guys that can also just be your point guard. He's having a huge year in Houston so far. It's unfortunate, but man, I thought he'd be good, but I didn't know he'd be this good. Like he's the way he's trending, he's going to be one of the best bigs, not just young bigs, just bigs. Period in the NBA. I'm curious. They hit an MRI. I don't know exactly what the injury is. It didn't look
Mhm.
good. It actually looked terrible. But
Yeah,
I'm
it looked
curious
really bad.
because Houston can't afford a guy like that to go down. At least right now in March, you
Yeah.
can't.
And the potential is just so there with that guy. I think we've joked about calling him, baby Jokic at times, right? I mean, it's
Mhm.
just he has those flashes at,
He put up
Jokic's age.
45 on
Yeah,
Wemby the other night.
right.
45.
Right.
Blocked
But
him twice, I think, too.
he's everything you want in a big man these days, right? I
Mhm.
mean, his ability to he has a great offensive game, not just the ability, to tap the ball in, but to actually score. He's a scoring big.
And a
He
damn good
can,
rebounder too.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah, and
underrated.
yeah, just defender all around. I mean, he really is a really talented player. So he's another guy I think we're going to be talking about from years to come, and we just
Yeah.
hope the injury isn't as big
Yeah.
as it seems. So.
I hope he's a guy that we're talking about for years to come. I have a feeling that we are. Especially as we've gone on for year, even 5 years ago, we're in such a radically different time as far as the development of sports medicine and sports science and how these guys are, like seemingly getting through injuries. Like I think the last guy that we really saw his career truly get derailed by injury was DeMarcus Cousins. But, like, even, like, after that, like, Kevin Durant, he tore his Achilles.
Yep.
He might be better than ever, which is just that's a whole other rabbit hole for a different day. But, like, you even look at, like, across sports, Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles, like, a couple months ago. He just got paid 4 years, $180 million.
Hmm.
Like, so, like, you look at the way these injuries are being treated, the way that, medicine's evolving, it's looking like, more and more likely, like, he should, be able to recover from this and still, be very much the guy that we think he can be. But at the same time, when we have looked at players and gone, "Man, what if?" Unfortunately, it started because of events like this.
Yeah. If only they had it when Derrick Rose initially tore his ACL.
Oh,
That's another guy that just
Big
never.
time.
if
Yeah.
I could go back in
Big
time
time.
and just give one guy just like the gift of modern medicine, it is Derrick Rose and that poor man's knees. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. The
No question.
the the all-time talent that we were deprived of. His MVP season, man. Whew. And,
Hmm.
and I mean, like, it's just unfortunately, it's just that time of year too, right? Where like just injury wise, like it just feels like this is the time of year where like, guys are have been like playing super hard. Like you're getting to the point where you've put in tons of minutes. You got that brief break from All-Star, but it's like, just to name, like a few guys who have gotten injured like over the last couple of weeks. Carl Anthony Towns, he's out for the season. Sadiq Bey, he's out for the season. You have on top of that, you just had Jalen Brunson, he just went out for injury. You have OG Anunoby's just coming back, but you still have you still have Julius Randle. You don't know what his situation is. Joel Embiid. You don't know where that's gonna go on. Like it is crazy how things can flip on a dime for a multitude of reasons. You truly never know with health where things can go, even in a few minutes.
Yeah, it's the wear and tear of the NBA season, and then you get to March, and just like pressure with pipes, it's gonna burst
Yep.
eventually. Different injuries, but still, it's about that time. It's why it's being healthy heading into the playoffs. If you're a top seed, is like when it is. I was gonna say winning the lottery might be a little aggressive, but it is. You're so lucky if you got a healthy team heading into the postseason, especially this time of year.
Yep. 100%. I am curious, assuming as of right now, teams, looking the way that they are, assuming health maintains, which by the way, the fact we have all these health updates and there still hasn't been one about the Clippers, like we need a documentary on that because that's almost a sports science marvel in itself. But, like I just, God dang it, that joke made me lose my train of thought. What was I saying? Assuming everyone stays okay, I remember where I was going with this now. I'm sorry. I'm a dumbass. All right. Assuming everyone stays healthy, like injury reports, like don't develop like too much from now. Health isn't as much of a factor going the rest of the season. Who are you feeling confident right now as like if you had to pick at gunpoint your finals team, your champion,
Ooh.
who are you choosing? Push
Should
comes
I
to
go
shove.
first,
Yeah,
Jeff?
take it away.
Boston is
Mm.
just too good, in my opinion. I think the Porzingis gamble, I think, is paying off. I think we're seeing him play great basketball. But Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown, two guys who just a couple years ago we were not sure of their future of how they would gel together. Um, but my goodness, the leap that they've made even this year from, of course, their disappointing Eastern Conference Finals against Miami last year, I think they're the team to beat. Sure, Milwaukee is fine with Dame and Giannis and Doc Rivers, but I just think this Boston team is going to be the team to beat. Even Cleveland's catching up on Milwaukee, but Boston's just remaining steady. They're remaining so steady. I think they're locked in for the playoff spot. Guys, I really think Boston's the team to beat in the league right now.
Does it not worry you that they couldn't beat Denver in
Well,
either of their matchups?
see, yep. That's where I was
That's
going,
that's
Sean.
my that's my one
That,
pushback. That's my one question
that
because
Yep.
That when you look at when you start to get to the nitty-gritty and you look at matchups and you look at certain things, obviously, like from a talent standpoint, you look at the roster from top down, like it is so hard to see how a team beats Boston 4 times. But like at the same time, once it starts to slow down, once it gets to fourth quarter offense, when it gets to crunch time, I still haven't seen that like Jason Tatum moment or that Jalen Brown moment or like that. It feels like a lot of the losses that Boston's had this season are just those fourth quarter collapses. And in particular, I just don't know. And granted, no team's going to have a solution for like a Nikola Jokic. No one's going to. But I just still wonder if he just creates far too many issues, like for Boston to where, I just the path to Denver repeating feels very clear right now if everyone stays healthy, at least to me.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. I think if there is a team to dethrone them, it would be Boston. Out of the East,
100%.
I don't think Milwaukee is positioned, especially with their coaching change. And I think there's still some deficient. I think Boston's the most complete team. So to Troy's point, I just don't know if they could beat the Nuggets because the Nuggets can beat you in different ways. The Celtics. Oh, you watch the Celtics, they live or die by the three, and defensively it helps because in transition, it's going to help you if you're missing, if you're jacking up threes and you're missing, you can get and rotate early. But still, the Nuggets can beat you shooting the three ball. If they don't shoot the three ball well, they can beat you on the inside. They can play aggressive, get to the free throw line. They still got Jokic, who seems to just be he's a winning formula within its own right. I still like the Nuggets. They've been tested. Miami wasn't, you know, Boston, but still, I can see the Nuggets repeating this year. Maybe Boston takes a couple games off the series. But again, you can make the argument for Boston. If not this year, what are you doing? I mean,
Oh,
but they've been
100%. I mean,
coached for so long.
it's
Is
now
that
or
our
never for
finals
Boston.
matchup, though? Are we pretty firm on that's our
Yeah,
finals
yeah,
matchup?
I would agree with that.
As of today, that's definitely our finals matchup. And if that's
Yep.
our finals matchup, we are eating good, deliciously. On the other hand, we are also coming fresh off of a season where we had our first play-in tournament team ever make the NBA finals. And so truly you never know what can happen in this league anymore. It is no longer like a deadlock as it once was. The thing that ultimately makes Denver terrifying to me though, just on both ends of the court, like obviously we talk about like the two-man game of Jokic and Murray and those guys in the pick and roll and how dangerous those are. Like those guys are, and obviously, like if you're Boston, you feel pretty good about having Drew Holiday, like in that equation. But the scary thing about Denver is they can also play pick and roll with Jokic and Aaron Gordon, and that you can't stop because Aaron Gordon getting to the rim is like a freight train. It's just freaking coming your way, man. Like, and there's nothing like few to little things you can do. And even then, like you look at like Michael Porter Jr. When he's playing well, like he's a lethal, guy from beyond the arc at times too. And it just, and also for my money, the most underrated part of that matchup, the coaching matchup. Like Joe Mazzulla's won a ton of games ever since he's taken that seat. And if you get to 50 wins, in March out of 60, out of like 64 games, like that is pretty dang impressive. I don't want to take anything away from him in that front. Mike Malone might be the best coach in hoops though. And it feels like that could potentially be a real mismatch. I mean, he outcoached Eric Spoelstra in the finals last year pretty heavily. And that's Spo.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing. I don't want to say holding, but that's like the one check mark you need to find out come the postseason is Joe Mazzulla. I think that's the only thing. You don't have that question with the Nuggets. You don't have that question with Mike Malone. Joe Mazzulla's proven to be a good regular season coach, but
Yep.
come the playoff time, that's when coaching matters twice as much, and that's why you saw Eric Spoelstra just coach circles around everybody else. So
Yep.
yeah, he will be tested come the postseason. Now, obviously, the Bucks don't have that anymore with Doc Rivers, unfortunately, but still, the Heat are going to be lurking. So that's the
Hmm.
biggest test for the Celtics to me.
Yeah. 100%. And, again, if Boston doesn't get it done with this group, one of the big what ifs I think we're going to be looking at with Boston for years to come for a lack of better words, is what if Ime Udoka kept it in his pants? What if there wasn't this whole situation? But legitimately though, like what if he didn't make the stupid decisions that he made, in his time with Boston? His 1 year there, he gets them to the finals. Legitimately, at one point, looked like they were going to beat like Golden State before they even made all these improvements to their roster.
It started off 1-0. Yeah, that series.
Mhm.
And now and then because of his own, sheer stupidity and in the situation he put himself in, he's no longer in that seat. And granted, he's got to feel pretty good about where he's at in Houston. He's done a pretty good job, thus far, in his tenure. And in Boston still has to feel pretty good about where they're at. But if they struggle to get through this postseason, because again, that's where coaching really shows, like, because that's when you have the chess battle of adjustments, when you can really, like, pull things back and have those different things come in. Like, that's where the questions of Doc Rivers comes in. We know you can win games in the regular season, right? Like, that's when coaches really
Yep.
make their legacy. So, and that's been the questions with Joe Mazzulla, is those little things. It's like, how many times you watch a Boston game and go, why the hell aren't you calling a timeout? Or like, why is this the play that you're running? Like, even with all these, even with how talented they are and how awesome they look at times, they could even leave you scratching your head. But again, you got to nitpick quite a bit when you're a team that, when you're the Boston Celtics, and the expectation every single year is championship or bust, because that's their organization. That's a heavy expectation to live with.
Mhm.
That's
Especially
right.
the success they had before Joe Mazzulla was on the staff. Not that they've won an NBA championship in at least the last couple, at least with the Tatum and or the Tatum and Brown duo, but still, like, you make the finals, you're expected to make it back. That's just how it is, especially if you improve as a roster. I think Joe Mazzulla is probably under the most pressure by far. At least this year. I know Doc Rivers, to me, it's like you already knew that was going to fail. Like, Joe Mazzulla is still regarded as a very, very good coach. He just hasn't been tested often in the postseason. So if they fall short again, yeah, he might be the domino there that has
Who
to
do you
fall.
think's under the more pressure player wise, Jason Tatum or Jalen Brown? Because on one hand, Jalen Brown is the one who just got paid this massive contract, the biggest, contract in the history of the league. Granted, that's just because of the timing in which he got the contract, but nonetheless, he's the one that got the bag. There were the questions about him with how badly he played postseason, when, he couldn't dribble with his left hand without getting exploited. But on the other hand, Jason Tatum didn't show up in that final series, was a big reason why they ultimately didn't get over the top there. And he's essentially, there's no reason why we shouldn't be talking about Jason Tatum as one of the, if not the best player in the league. He has all the tools, he has every ability and more.
Hmm.
It's just doing it in this moment,
Yeah,
right?
to me, it's Tatum. I think he deserves to be under the most pressure. I think the Brown contract, we knew it was bad when he signed it. So it's not like now he's under more pressure. I just think that contract was just terrible within its own right. But again, it's not always who's the best; it's who's due to get paid. And now that's why he gets paid that type of money. I think Jason Tatum, he has to be the best player on a championship team. He is. Therefore, when it comes down to the finals, the biggest series of the entire season of your life, he needs to be their best player. And he wasn't last year. He did, or when they last made the finals, he didn't play up to par. And that's why he's going to be under more scrutiny, especially in a city like Boston. I mean, yeah, could you
Yep.
point the finger at Jalen Brown? Yeah, but at the end of the day, Jason Tatum's a guy that's going to be top five in MVP odds every year. So you got to act like it. You got to be the most valuable player. They went out and got Drew Holiday. They went out and got Porzingis. Not going to be looking at those guys. You're going to be looking at your best player. Yeah, Joe Mazzulla might fall on the sword, but if you're talking about on the team, it's going to be Jason Tatum, in my opinion.
Right.
He
It's
should be
always
held.
going to
Should be
be
held to that standard. He should.
always going to be the best player on a championship team who gets the most scrutiny, and the pressure are going to be on that person's shoulder the most. So yeah, to me that's a clear one. Yeah, the Brown one's interesting because of the bag, Sean. But I'm with you, Jeff. It's got to be Tatum.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think so too. Ultimately, truth of the matter is, like at the end of the day, like if Tatum wants, because I think with Jalen Brown, we know he's an all-star caliber player. We know he's a great player in his own right. These are legitimately the things where with Tatum, because because this is the level of talent that he has. These are going to be the things that decide whether or not we remember him as an all-time great.
Mhm.
Because statistically, talent-wise, he has everything, on paper to be remembered as one of, if not the greatest Celtic of all time. Just with everything that he has to his arsenal and just to his disposal. He has everything that he needs in order to be able to make that distinction. But ultimately, it's going to come down to whether he can actually pull through in these types of moments. And granted, it's harder than ever to be able to do that. But this is about as good of a supporting cast as you're going to get. This is about as weak of an Eastern Conference road as you're going to get. This is about as for lack of better terms, this is about as weak of a Western Conference as we're going to have over the next few years, which speaks to just how talented this is right now. Because Wemby's only getting older, Anthony Edwards is only getting better. The Lakers aren't going to be out of it forever.
Mhm.
So it's going to be interesting, man. And again, this is when it tightens up. This is when basketball really starts to get fun. And I'm excited to talk about it with you guys. I'm excited to watch it, and we're gonna be breaking it down and talking all about it here in the months to come because this is From Half Court. We talk all things Pistons basketball, all things NBA basketball. If you like that, be sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that mother notification bell, but
Do it.
also be sure you go and follow my guy Jeff on X at Jeff Iafrady, and also catch him out on Crunch Time with Jeff and Booner on Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 p.m. on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel, show him some love. Also follow Troy on X at TroySergi44. And thank you guys so much for listening. We will catch you guys next time for another episode of From Half Court. Be sure you subscribe.